question of why people made the housing choices they did between 1870 and 1930, we first came up with a few questions that would help formulate an answer. What was happening in America between 1870 and 1930? What types of industry were present in the area? What forms of transportation were available? What kind of development was taking place? As people moved here, what kinds of housing did they build? For our case study, we chose to focus on the city of Dallas, specifically the Oak Cliff district. Oak Cliff, now part of Dallas, was founded in 1886 by John Armstrong and Thomas Marsalis. It originated as an agricultural community that transmitted into an elite neighborhood and suburb of Dallas. Due to its close proximity, Oak Cliff's economic and civic welfare depended heavily on the development of Dallas. In the late 1800s, Dallas was rapidly growing into a major commerce center. Originally an agricultural community, the convergence of several railroads in the city made it a great location for industry. This created more jobs and caused a large influx of immigrants, making Dallas the most populous city in Texas. In 1886, John Armstrong and Thomas Marsalis Dallas Land and Loan Company bought 320 acres of land of the southwest of what was then Dallas. Their goal was to create an elite residential area, so they divided the land into 20-acre lots to be sold to the public. Marsalis invested in Oak Cliff in the hopes of it being a prosperous entity. He opened an electric plant, waterworks, paved roads throughout the community, and built an elevated railroad connecting Oak Cliff to the Dallas courthouse. Creation of the city, they decided to advertise the city as a prestigious community with large houses, broad streets, and luxurious amenities, including things such as a vacation resort, an opera house, a zoo, an easy road and rail access to the city of Dallas.
Oak Cliff was inhabited very quickly, one of the reasons due to the tapping of the oil reserves in Texas in 1894. Consequently, railroads began connecting Texas to the established eastern world. Industries were then able to transport goods as well as citizens, promoting growth. 1900, Oak Cliff had a population of 3640, citizens with the average growth rate at 3.8%, almost 3 times the national average of 1.3%. Accompanying this growth came a wave of workers in search of jobs and housing. The influx of new industry meant Dallas would become the largest inland cotton market in the world. Oak Cliff had a few setbacks, including the Panic of 1893 and the flooding of the Trinity River. Both played important roles that led to vital changes in housing development.
The Panic of 1893 forced Marsalis to sell the property and brought his vision of the luxurious amenities and prosperous city to an end. In 1903, financial hardship forced Oak Cliff into annexation to Dallas. Despite Oak Cliff's annexation, the community maintained a unique and lasting identity to its physical separation from Dallas via the Trinity River.
The Trinity River provided many benefits for the Oak Cliff community, but also posed a serious threat. Realized in 1908, it flooded, damaged property, blocked bridges, and stopped transportation to downtown Dallas. A man named Jerry Dealer used this disaster to promote his plan for an aqueduct, which was later built in 1923. This new bridge connecting the two cities was 5,100 feet long and cost more than $500,000 to build, and was considered to be the longest bridge of this type in the world. It greatly improved transportation between the two communities and continued to help the growth of the neighborhood.
In addition, there were numerous technological advances sprouting up. These included Marsalis' first elevated railway in the south, new levee construction, railroad stations, playgrounds, and as well as electric and gas lamps. The railway provided job opportunities for many and allowed a greater number of potential homebuyers to cheaply travel and view properties.
The largest districts in Oak Cliff is the Winnetka Heights Historic District.
Developed in 1908, Winnetka Heights was advertised as Dallas' ideal suburbs, based on 3 key ideas.
First was the view of the surrounding country and city from atop the high ground of the district.
Second was the promise of modern conveniences such as electric lines, paved streets, and sewers.
Third was a short distance from downtown and streetcar access. Early housing in Winnetka Heights began with luxurious prairie-style housing. Lots were set aside to allow for the building of cottages, bungalows, and 2-story prairie houses. Oak Cliff's development greatly influenced its architecture and the types of housing during this period. Before the merging of Dallas and Oak Cliff, home styles include traditional colonial and Tudor forms with little ornamentation. The onset of World War I placed restriction on materials and created a housing shortage for soldiers and families. After the war, the ever-growing influx of immigrants meant new tastes. In the Oak Cliff community, this meant most of the larger homes sit on broad tree-lined streets and were built by hired labor as opposed to kit homes or cheaper self-built constructions. Homes in this area range from wood frame bungalows and post-war cottages to stone or brick Tudor homes. This is easily seen in the Hampton Hills neighborhood, which remains one of the most undisturbed locations of historical architecture in Dallas. In this era, America's population grew rapidly. Due to the Civil War's end, many slaves are now able to migrate to Dallas for work opportunities. The increase in industry also created a surplus of jobs, thus making Dallas a major center of commerce. In addition, the national conservation movement influenced people's growing appreciation of nature and rural areas. In contrast to the growing economy, however, the 20th century also brought with it both World War I and the Great Depression. Dallas's growing cotton industry soon proved to be the largest inland cotton trade, not to mention the grain trading or transportation industries present. This employed a large number of low-income, low-class workers that required cheaper housing. Dallas was also home to big banking institutions, including the Federal Reserve and insurance companies. The city attracted business owners and other white-collar workers that could afford to live in places such as Oak Cliff. The main form of transportation was by rail. In fact, Oak Cliff was home to one of the first elevated railways in the country, had a network of electric streetcar rails that carved pathways through the small community, and housed Ford's Model T automobile. The increased availability of public transportation made suburban living easier. Though it began as an agricultural community, development during this period was primarily industrial due to the railroad bringing many different industries to the city. This industrialization brought urbanization and a creation of more low-income housing. During the First World War, Dallas's aviation industry also experienced substantial growth. The city center of Dallas gradually became a dense urban area, with closely packed, usually low-income housing, while surrounding districts such as Oak Cliff remained a suburban area with spread-out homes and open spaces. Eventually, the wealthier class began to use less urbanized regions as escapes.